Welcome into Get Me The Brandy and Happy New Year. Haley Hunter alongside Josh Getzoff. What a start for the Penguins this year, who are undefeated in 2026. But before we get into things, Josh, how was your Christmas? How was your New Year?
It was good, Hales. Hope the same for you. Like, spin it back was weird this year because we didn't have that Toronto game right before Christmas break. So we
Yeah.
had a few extra days and ventured a little further east to my wife's family in Boston and then met the team in Chicago on the other end of the break. So it was nice to have a couple extra days of downtime. What about you?
Yeah, so nice to see family in Canada and in Michigan. And as you can see, I still have my Christmas tree up. You can kind of see behind me. But yeah, when do you take the tree down? What do you think? That should be a game day question for you. How long until the tree has to come down?
That is a good question. I mean, personally, I am of the opinion that once Christmas is over, it can go at any time. But that also depends on motivation, right? Like if I'm not feeling it, it's not going anywhere. I felt it last week and it's gone now, but it would probably have lasted through the new year had I not been motivated. So
Hey, guess how long I left my tree up the last 2 years in season. Just give me a guess.
I'm gonna go with let's go with the spring equinox, like
March.
March.
Oh my gosh, I didn't think you would guess that late. But yeah, because remember we had like that 15-day trip last year, and suddenly it was like Christmas and then it was March. So I don't know. I think as long as the Penguins are winning, I keep it up. As soon as they lose, I'll take it down. Maybe that's what I do this year. You know how superstitious the
That's
guys can
actually
be.
pretty good. Sidney
Yeah.
Crosby's wearing off on you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I might be becoming a little superstitious myself. Yeah, maybe he is. Well, hey, how about the Metro division as of late? Penn's doing such a good job against their division. You know, last season that was kind of an issue for them. They were 9-13-4 against Metro teams, but they've won four straight against Metro teams, and right now 7-1-3 this season. I mean, that's huge considering how jam-packed this Metro is right now, Josh.
It is huge, Haley. And I think, I go back to when Kyle Dubas was first hired and he talked a lot about the vision for the team. But one thing he said that was like a present tense thing is, you know, you can control your direct path to the playoffs if you do well in the division. And you
Yeah,
see it right there. Like last year, the Penguins were terrible in the Metro. They played 26 Metro games. They got points in 13 of them. This year, they played what? 11 Metro games. They've got points in 10 of them. And they've
yeah,
won nine of them, eight of them. Eight of them. Either way, you think about the success they've had this year. It to me, it's straight on with how they've played within their division and how they now place within the Metro. Yes, they're on the
yeah.
outside looking into the top three, but if you handle your business in the division and you do so in the way the Penguins are doing it, where you're picking up at least a point, if not two, more than not when you're facing divisional foes. I mean, those are points that swing away from teams that could be potentially ahead of you in the division. So obviously, another test with New Jersey on Thursday before a couple of out of division games with Calgary and Boston over the weekend. But to come back and beat Columbus was huge. And I just think
Mhm.
it's been impressive this year. I mean, started opening night with the win at Madison Square Garden. Then they won the home opener against the Islanders. Those are back to
Yeah.
back Metro wins out of the gate. So hopefully they can keep it going.
Yeah, they really have. It's I was looking at the scores earlier, and I'm seeing like, okay, the Sabres won. They recently had a 10-game winning streak. You expect that. A couple other games you kind of expected to go that way, but then I see the Devils losing 9-0. So I don't think that's the way the Penguins wanted to draw things up as they come into Pittsburgh. But always a good test when you have a team coming in hungry. So looking forward to seeing how that goes for that next game for the Penguins. But with that, no Harrison Brunick. Some people were expecting him to come back from representing Team Canada at the World Juniors. And I know you have some insight from your conversation earlier at the rink on that.
Yeah, so I this week we actually had a first time guest on Penguins Game Plan, and it was
Yeah.
Penguins Director of Hockey Ops and Legal Affairs, Vuki Mpofu, who I kind of joke with Vuki, and you know him as well, Haley. But when I sat down with him today, I said I think a lot of people know your name, but they probably don't know your face or your voice because you've never spoken publicly before since getting hired a couple of years
True.
back. So it was really cool to hear a little bit more about how his career path and how he landed with Kyle Dubas and they built a relationship and he found his way to Pittsburgh. But as
Yeah.
far as Brunick is concerned, I recommend everyone check out that episode. It's going to be 5 o'clock live on Sportsnet Pittsburgh on Thursday night before the Devils
Awesome.
game. But will be, podcasted and linked to the YouTube page as well, I believe. But as far as Vuki and what he told me about Harrison Brunick is concerned, so yeah, the decision's made. He's going to go back to Kamloops in the Western Hockey League and play for the Blazers for the remainder of their season. This does not mean that his time as a pro this year is over, though, because when that season's over, he will probably come back this way and most likely will play for Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And the reason that I say most likely is because you never know what's going to happen in Pittsburgh. There could be trades. There could be a lot of injuries, but it does appear like there's quite a bit of options on the right side of the blue line right now. And he's obviously a righty and a defenseman. And if you're going to continue to let him grow after he finishes the rest of this year in the Western League, the best option's probably Wilkes-Barre because, as you know, Hailey, and as Vuki, reminded me today, he's at 9 games in the NHL. Yep. So if he plays another game, boom, he's activated year 1 of his entry-level deal. And he's been on the roster despite not playing. He's been on the roster for about 30-ish games. And if he gets to 40 games on the roster this year, then they lose a year of restricted free agency and player, control going into a contract negotiation. Okay. So there are two tangibles there to watch as far as him coming back this way. But I think, for the development for a 19-year-old, the best thing he's going to be doing is playing. So he's going to go back there. He's going to play monster minutes every situation. He's going to be their best player and their leader. And we'll see where it goes. But I think he gained a lot out of all the steps this year, whether it was the NHL, the conditioning stint in Wilkes, World Juniors, and being an assistant captain and getting a medal. I think there have been significant steps this year, and he's obviously a huge part of the future.
Yeah, and that's great for his confidence too, right? Going back, being the best player after what's been probably one of the more challenging years for him and just kind of adjusting to pro hockey.
The road to puck drop begins on Penguins Tonight. A first look at the latest game news, stories from around the league, and so much more. Penguins Tonight, 1 hour before every game on SportsNet Pittsburgh. Presented by Morgan & Morgan.
Well, as we continue to celebrate so many Sidney Crosby milestones, as of late, we are so excited to be welcoming in Rob Rossi to the vodcast, who has 21 years of experience as the Penguins beat reporter for various outlets and has certainly had hundreds of interviews with Sid himself in the locker room over the last couple of decades. Rob, so great to see you. Thanks for coming on. And how was the holiday break for you?
It was great. It was great. It's good to see you guys. I'm not around as much now. It's kind of weird. So I get to see my friends here, and congratulations on this. This has been fun to watch from afar. So I'm happy to join you. And I think the holiday break was great just because the Penguins keep winning coming out of it. So
no. Hey, it's so exciting. Well, I loved seeing, of course, when Sid became the all-time points leader over Mario Lemieux. You posted something on your social media that night, December 21st, after that game at PPG Paints Arena. Would love to have you share that with us because that was a really cool story that takes us back to his first home game as a Penguin at Mellon Arena.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it shorter than the video. So when Sid scored his goal,
details. No, take your time.
Well, the funniest part about that story is what I left out, which was I ended up having to chase Christina Aguilera around the lower bowls of the old Civic Arena because she sang the national anthem and it was a surprise. And I was the only one willing to go interview her from the paper that I was working at the time. But the morning of that day, the morning skate, so the Penguins had opened the season with 2 road games that year. And so they were coming back to play the Boston Bruins, and the media, it was sort of like a Stanley Cup final type media contingent because you had people from all over the North America coming to cover Crosby's first game. It was such a hyped event. Felt like all of Canada was here. And it was probably the first time since I'd been around the Penguins at that point where Mario Lemieux wasn't the guy everybody was trying to talk to. Mario kind of enjoyed it. So Sid comes off for the morning skate. Back then he took morning skates and he was usually one of the last guys off the ice. And he comes off and sits in his locker in the old Civic Arena home dressing room sitting under his bench. And Mario kind of uses the opportunity to sneak out to there was a player's lounge connected right to the locker room. It was very small. And so everybody was talking to Sid. And I said to a colleague, I said, why don't you listen to Sid? I'm going to go try to get Mario. And I just nodded in my direction. So I was like, so I go and there was, I remember very specifically, there was like this little mini bar where players would make a smoothie or get coffee. And there was like 2 smoothie machines and a coffee machine. And it was a primitive coffee machine. And Mario, being the health nut that he was, always went for the coffee. So, so he's getting his cup of coffee And, I go up to him and he kind of gives me that look, which is like, what, you going to ask me something? And so I said, you don't really think this guy's going to like break all of your records, do you? And for those unfamiliar with Mario, he doesn't need to say a lot to say a lot. Sometimes he doesn't need to say anything at all. He'll just give you sort of a wink. And that's what he did. He kind of winked and smiled. He goes, he probably will. And I always remembered that because like at first I kind of thought, oh, this is the owner of the team just going along with the narrative, right? And then
Right.
by the end of Sidney Crosby's first year, you're like, oh wow, this guy's like, he's legit. Sid's such a different player than Mario. Mario was sort of this alien that did things on the ice that we had never seen before or since from a big guy. Sid's a different type of never seen before because in that season, Sid was a kid. I mean, literally, that was the name, Sid the Kid. But it was like we joked the first day of practice, he just looked like a 25-year-old at 18 or 19 or whatever he was at the time. So he was just built different. And he had a tremendous first year, but sort of towards the end of that first year, I kept going back to that thing Mario told me. And I shared it with Sid, I think, when he became the all-time Penguins game played leader. I sent him a message and just said, hey, because I would always say to him in the room, like, well, you're going to get Mario's records. And he would be like, yeah, but Mario played a lot less games than I did. Sid was always very clear about that. So I reminded Sid of the story the night he scored the goal. I sent him, or the night he broke Mario's record for points, and I sent him it, and I said, "Yo, it's all you got left is the goal record." And he goes, "Yeah, that one's going to be a little tougher." But he goes, "I love hearing that story." He goes, "I have told it before to other people too." So, but he claims Mario never told him that that he thought he was going to break all the records, but. So I think I'm like the conduit between those two. So it's, it was weird to watch from afar, but I'll always remember that moment of Mario predicting it. And of course, if anybody would know, right, it would be Mario Lemieux.
That is
That's
so
awesome,
cool.
Rob.
And I'm curious, like, what do you remember about those two being in the same locker room together? Like, what was that dynamic like of Mario really taking Sid under his wing?
Well, the first thing I remember was, even though Mario was the captain of that team, Sid very quickly became sort of the heartbeat of that team. It was an interesting group. There were a lot of veterans. The Penguins had gone out and signed guys like Ziggy Palffy and Sergei Gonchar and John LeClaire. They'd signed a lot of veterans, but they also had this young group coming in. And Ed Olczyk was the coach at the beginning of the year. The things I remember that year were, the only time I saw Sid really angry was when the Flyers kind of tried to physically beat on him and accuse him of being a whiner. And I remember Mario kind of like joking with us one day in the room after Sid had this game in Philadelphia when we came back to Pittsburgh, and there was like a practice. They used to practice at the old Mellon Arena or the Civic Arena at that point. And somebody said to Mario, Sid had got his teeth knocked out. I think, I forget who it was. Maybe it might've been Darian Hatcher. And then he scored an overtime goal to beat them. And Mario's just kind of like, yeah, that's how you kind of get welcomed into it. They just try to beat you up, and then you gotta make them pay. And it was like, I remember Mark Madden, the radio host in town, saying, well, yeah, that's the night he became a Penguin. But what I really remember was Edzo would always talk to Mario like about everything before a game at the morning skate. And Sid was like sort of respectfully trying to know his role and know his place. But it was about 3 weeks in where like even John LeClaire was like, yeah, this guy's kind of the captain. Like he's pointing at Sid, like Mario's Mario, but Mario was the owner too. So you got to remember that. But Sid's personality kind of really took over. The other thing is there was this weird stretch where they played Sid on wing on Mario's line, which was a terrible idea because Sid hated it. He felt very uncomfortable at wing, and Mario, to his admission, said, I can't skate to keep up with him at that point. Mario was basically skating on one healthy hip. And the other thing, of course, was just when they were on ice together, they were magic, but there would be these times where you would just see them talking to each other before a face-off, and you just realize that, like, Sidney Crosby's not the 6 foot that they list him as. And Mario Lemieux's a lot bigger than the 6'4" than they list him as. And like to this day, when you see pictures of it, you're like, wow, Mario's a giant. And like Sid's not a small guy, but compared to Mario. So those are the things I remember a lot from that season.
I know it's a different time and different situation, Rob, but like obviously Sidney Crosby's now in a situation where he's going into the 2-year deal he's on right now. Next year's the last year of that 2-year deal. I think we all expect him potentially to play beyond that. But given the fact that he's in his late 30s, and Mario, you saw towards the end of his career as far as covering the team was concerned, health-wise aside, do you notice any similarities, anything between the two of them? How are they different with these two guys? Like late in their careers, continuing to set records, continuing to set standards, but obviously doing it a different way.
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. You know, Mario's body was broken down. I would say the last great Mario year was probably 2001-02, before the Olympics, before his like hip needed the surgery. I think that year he was leading the league in scoring until the Penguins basically traded everybody with like 15 games left. I've never seen a player as dominant this long in the NHL the way Sid has been. Gretzky and Mario could not score goals in their late 30s the way Sidney could. They still had the ability to see plays and set guys up. They were that much smarter than everybody. They had that much of a hockey IQ advantage even at that age. And in that stage of their career where they were limited with their mobility. But Sid isn't at all limited by mobility. And I actually think Sidney is more comfortable as a goal scorer now than he has been at any time in his career. I haven't had a chance to talk to him about this, but I suspect it's because where in the past he maybe felt the Penguins didn't need him to be a dominant goal scorer to win as much. He feels now that they do. And so I think he's more comfortable now. But I don't know. I think with Sid, we're just witnessing the continuation of a career in which everything we've seen, we hadn't seen before and may not see after. He was a completely unique player. He remains that player in terms of you don't see dominant point producing centers play the way he does in tight quarters and down low and create offense like that. And I think because he keeps himself in such great shape, that style, Josh and Hailey, I think that style really translates well to a later game career as opposed to what Mario's and Wayne's did when they weren't as great. They weren't as, the game got younger. I don't think Sid's been as affected by younger guys who come in as better skaters because he's still so good at skating, but he's also he's so good at drawing defenders or drawing other skaters into him and using their momentum and using his strength to create his own space. So I don't know that there is a comparable, except for the fact that, Mario's final years, so basically when he came back from the 3.5-year retirement, everywhere he went, there was this sense with the other team. It's like, wow, I'm playing against Mario Lemieux. And I'm sure you both see this being on the road. There's a generation of players now that are like, yeah, that's Sidney Crosby. Heck, Sid's playing with a few of them on his own team now. So.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Along with, you mentioned like Sid, just the fact that he's still able to score goals, but just the type of game he's played for so long, his hockey IQ, it's been so impressive to see. But when it comes to goal scoring, I don't think there's anybody that seems to like goal scoring as much as Evgeni Malkin. So $1 million question, of course, this year, is he going to retire? Is he going to keep playing? Just curious your thoughts, Rob, as someone who I know is close to him, has gotten close to him over the years. What kind of legacy is he leaving behind once he finally does call it quits?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've known Evgeni a long time. We've had some of the best interviews I've ever done are with him. Look, I think his legacy is going to be and this is going to sound to people maybe a little bit weird. He's the greatest number 2 in hockey history, in my mind. And by that, I mean,
Well said.
as a guy that could have been a number one in any situation, this is a guy that had the type of stuff to be a franchise centerpiece player. And he was in Pittsburgh, but he was just so comfortable being the yang to Sid's yin. And it's just, I don't think he gets enough credit for that, putting the ego aside and really saying, like, look, even though I'm a number one center, I'm an MVP, I'm a two-time scoring champion, I'm the first, Russian to win the Conn Smythe. I've won every individual award. He was always willing to take the number two assignment as the center, to go against, to be on the number two line, to not run his own power play, things like that. At a time when, let's face it, the Penguins, I always laugh when they talk about the Pittsburgh model, because the Pittsburgh model presumes that in a draft of a 4-year span, you're going to draft Marc-Andre Fleury, Evgeni Malkin, Sidney Crosby, Kris Letang, and Jordan Staal. And no, you're not.
Not
all of those guys will probably end up in the Hall of Fame. And how many times do you lose a draft lottery and end up with Evgeni Malkin? You don't. I mean, imagine if the Penguins had lost the draft lottery in 2005. With all due respect to Bobby Ryan or Jack Johnson, they're not Sidney Crosby. The best thing that ever happened to the Penguins was losing that lottery, because not only did they get Malkin, but they had the most lottery balls to get Crosby. And the reason I say this is, from the minute Malkin stepped onto the ice in the NHL in 2007 or 2006, he and Crosby were like the two best centers in the league. So there was no Pittsburgh model, because that model just doesn't exist. I always go back to Gretzky and Messier, right? But Messier was not as breathtaking an offensive force as Malkin was. Certainly he became a legendary player, but when you're talking about Gretzky and Messier is the only real comparable to a 1-2 center tandem to Crosby and Malkin, and those guys played together 10 years. Crosby and Malkin have played together 2 decades. And, I would say for a decade and a half, because of those two, the Penguins had a legitimate Stanley Cup favorite going into every postseason. I think Evgeni Malkin's legacy is going to be as one of the most beloved athletes in Pittsburgh history, a guy who personality-wise was the polar opposite publicly of Sid. Sid is very stoic and always says the right thing. Gino says the funny thing. What's interesting, and you guys know this, usually after a tough loss, you want to go to Evgeni, because he'll be the one that kind of lays it on the line. And I talked to him about that. And, he told me, he's like, yeah, Sid and I have this sort of agreement. Sid talks all the time, but when something needs to be said to the media, I'll say it. I remember when Matt Murray got, the crowd was jeering him after a save after a rough afternoon against, I think it was Boston. And we were talking to Murray, and the crowd was letting him have it. And Evgeni heard the questions at the PPG Paints Arena, and he saw me on the outskirts of the interview scrum, and he just did hey, come here. And I was like, what? And he's like, what they say about Murs? And I'm like, he's just talking about, the crowd and everything. And he goes, open book. And so I opened my notebook, and he just was basically like, I expect this from Philadelphia, not Pittsburgh. You're supposed to support a champion goaltender. That's our teammate. And I'm like, Sidney would never say that, because he's very diplomatic. Evgeni was smart enough to realize that he could get away with saying things, because he could always be like, well, I didn't mean it that way. That was just my second language. But right. I think, look, he's one of the greatest Penguins of all time. I don't know if he's third or fourth, because you kind of got to put Mario and Sid on their own level. But, I've always said at some point there's going to be a picture of 66, 68, 87, and 71 hanging from the rafters wherever the Penguins play. And if those are the only numbers they ever retire, that's a pretty damn good standard to reach. I don't know if Evgeni's going to call it quits. I know he, from talking to him this summer, he was at peace with the idea that he was going to come back in the best shape and try to enjoy every moment of this season. I know he's got his son, Nikita, is going to be 11, I believe. It's, Josh, like when you have kids, it changes things. And I think he really wants to be there for Nikita as he continues to play soccer and play hockey on his own right. I don't think Evgeni wants to, from talking to him, I don't get the sense he wants to be just a guy in this league. I think he's proven this year when healthy that he hasn't been. Yeah. There's going to be a lot for him to weigh, but I do think a lot of it will depend on how the Penguins season goes because, he wants to be back into the playoffs. Him and Sid had a conversation several years ago when Sid was really concerned the Penguins weren't going to re-sign Kris Letang and Evgeni Malkin. And, Sid had rarely put his foot down to try to influence management, but he was very adamant, like those guys stay. And, the deals got done. And I think everybody thought at the time, well, that would be it. Right. And then now we're 4 years later. I think Evgeni's going to take some time. I think when he meets with Kyle Dubas in February, I think he's going to say, look, I don't want to be traded, but I don't know what I want to do yet. And I think, we'll find out sometime in the summer. I don't think Evgeni's going to hold up the Penguins for some big money. I'd imagine he'd come back at a reduced rate on a 1-year deal, but I think he's going to take some time and see how his body feels and see where his personal life is. That's why I'm really hoping that more than for the fans or for anybody else, I would like to see for Kris, Evgeni, and Sid, I'd like to see the Penguins get into the playoffs just to see them get one more crack at it. I think that'd be really fitting because we forget where the franchise was before those three came together. And then what they did was give us the greatest run by any team in Pittsburgh sports history. It was the longest, most sustained run of success. And that's saying something given what we've seen here with the Penguins and the Steelers in the past. So for me, his legacy will be also he's just the funniest guy I know. I've never met anybody who
I was just going to ask, is there anybody more funny than Gino?
I mean, Fleury's funny in his own way. But a lot of that's because Mark Mark still has that broken English with the French accent and everything. And he'll occasionally say a cuss word that he shouldn't say. And he plays the pranks, but Evgeni's just legitimately funny. I remember when I was over in Moscow, I don't think I've told you guys this story. So I was over in Moscow in 2012, one of the 2 times I've been over there to work on him on the book we're writing. And, we're walking through the Kremlin, and there was a Evgeni Malkin in his apartment in Moscow at the time had Russian nesting dolls and on these shelves, and between them there were candy dishes, and the guy ate candy like it was going out of be. He had a sweet tooth, and the Russian nesting dolls. He had a row of Alex Ovechkin and a row of Sidney Crosby. Sid was above Alex. And then there were M&Ms, Snickers, and all that stuff. So we're walking through the Kremlin, and we're just talking, and I have a photographer with me, and we're having him point out things, that he thinks about. And he sees this ice cream stand, a Nestle ice cream stand, and he goes over to it. And he looks at everybody that's in the crew, and he's like, do you want some ice cream? And we're like, no. So he wants ice cream. This is 2 p.m. in Russia, right? He's the reigning MVP of the National Hockey League. And this little kid comes up to him, and you hear Malkin, Malkin, Malkin. And they're speaking in Russian. And Malkin looks at the guy and the little kid. And I guess the kid's maybe 8 or 9 years old. And, Gino says something to him. What I think he says to him is, do you want some ice cream? And the kid gets very excited. And then this older woman comes over just screaming in Russian, just screaming. And she's her and Malkin are getting into this, and the kid's looking, and the woman just slaps the ice cream out of the kid's hand and takes the kid's hand and walks away. And I'm like, okay, you got to explain what happened here. And he just looks at me and goes, I say kid ice cream. I buy kid ice cream. And mom says no. And I'm like, but I'm Gino. I'm MVP. Let me buy ice cream. And kid's upset. And I'm just it was just the perfect Evgeni moment, because the way he explained it was I just wanted to buy the kid the ice cream. And his rationale was you should let me buy the ice cream. I'm Evgeni Malkin. And the mom was like, no, you would ruin dinner. And it's just things like that are, little things that I've witnessed over the years. There was a time when we were down in Florida talking for the book, and he heard that Connor McDavid had signed a contract, and he just goes, "Oh," and I'm like, "What? You upset that McDavid's going to stick around?" He goes, "No, I'm upset that I wasn't born younger. Gino could make more money." And I was just like, it was just the way he thinks of things like that. So,
it's just the one line that nobody's expecting, and you're just like where did that come from? But it's absolutely hilarious.
Or even like the incident like last year. Yeah. Or even the incident last year where he got robbed, right? Like we all heard about this, right? And everybody thought he lost his rings, right? The rings were stolen. Right. So what happened was, I talked to him later about, like, what happened? He's like, I have 2 safes and I forgot the one. So the rings were in a safe in his house and he just forgot about. And so then he had to tell the police. He had to tell the police. Right. So he had to tell the police, yeah, they weren't really stolen. I just forgot where I put them. And I'm just like, of course. God. Who forgets where they put 3 Stanley Cup rings? So,
right.
So, yeah.
That is incredible. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Breaking news on your show here. So,
yeah, there we go. Thanks, Rob. I love it. Hey, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you, and great stories, by the way. This has been so much fun hearing about everything. But Hockey Talks, that game is coming up in a couple of weeks. I know you have been such a light on your social media and just talking about mental health awareness and how important that is to you. Could you just share for us, why you think that the NHL doing this league-wide is so important to have a game like this for each team every year, and just kind of where your passion stems from? Because I love that they do this every year.
Gladly, yeah. I think it's great. I think any league that uses its platform to promote mental health or mental illness awareness and to end the stigmatization of people that have mental illness. It's important to me because I am about 12 years removed from being diagnosed with ADHD, inattentive, anxiety, and depression. And I decided to go public with my diagnoses when they happened because I don't have a big platform, but I felt like if people could see that somebody that they thought had a cool job and knew some cool people through his job had this stuff and was open about it, if one person feels like that helps them not feel any type of way about it, then you have an obligation. And I think, hockey to me is the greatest team sport. And so much of hockey, though, when you watch hockey, it's covered up. These guys are wearing helmets and face shields and they're wearing uniforms but when the NHL promotes something like this, I think it really shows, figuratively, you can take that helmet off and show that the things that you are dealing with when you have mental illness, there's nothing to feel shame about. There's nothing to feel bad about. You are sick. You're not weak. And I just feel like when the NHL does this, it helps in a little way every year make it more normalized for people that are neurodivergent, as I am. And that basically means there's a spectrum of diagnosed mental disorders that people have, ranging from autism to OCD to ADHD to anything in that realm. It helps people like me and people younger than me and people older than me who are less comfortable with being public about it know that there is support. And I think that generally hockey can do a great service by being more inclusive to all types of people. But, the mental health thing is something that I think, I'm glad to see that as we're recording this, the AHL has signed a new CBA and they have improved mental health, mental health safeguards in their CBA. The NHLPA has done it in theirs. It's something that I hope one day we don't have to talk about to normalize, but I'm glad that every team gets to do this. And, I'm just going to say, if anybody's out there, that's listening and you're dealing with something like this, like the thing I've adopted through my stuff is like, when you're feeling it and when you're down, just think next shift. I just want to get to the next shift, and think of, and the reason I use shift is shifts are about what, 30 to 40 seconds, right? If you can just get yourself to that 30 to 40 seconds where you're going to be able to breathe and let it out there and not overthink it, then that's going to make the time between the shifts a lot easier.
Really, really well said, Rob. And just so proud of you for how outspoken you've been about that on your social media. I am sure you have no idea how many people you're really impacting and helping by posting about that. So thank you for being so open about that. I hope the NHL keeps doing things like this. And I know it really does make a difference. Josh and I were so happy to have you on. Thanks so much.
Can I say one thing? One thing? You guys did. I'm so happy that Sid did break the record in a game you guys were able to do. I did not want it to be a national game. And the interviews with Sid were great. Josh, your call was excellent.
Yes.
But I have a question for you. How aware were you that you were being filmed of your call? Because like a couple of people asked me, like, did Josh know the camera was on him? And I'm like, I assume he figured it, but I don't know. So that's my question to you, if I may.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rob. And also thanks for sharing all that, the story of your mental health journey and everything. I think, like Hailey said, that's important. It's impressive that you have the guts, quite honestly, to share it. And it means a lot, I'm sure, to a lot of people to be able to relate to that, whether they want to be public with it or not. As far as the question you asked me, I got to give credit to our director, Tyler Graham, because he was the one who wanted that camera in there. I am not against the camera, but I do think that it is something that if it's every single time, it kind of takes away from the moment. But if it's just something that you splice in every now and then, it's kind of a fun aspect to it. So I was like, yeah, sure. At that point, you have to remember the Penguins have been shut out in consecutive games. So I'm like, man, anything to change it up. Let's whatever. Like, I'll eat dinner for breakfast if that's going to get us going here in the opposite direction. So we put the camera in there, and during the game, no, I don't notice it. Like I'm zeroed in on the action, and it's kind of off to the side. But that was Tyler Graham's idea. I want to give him credit. It was funny. You don't think about that when it happens. But then when your phone is consistently blowing up for the few days afterwards, you're like, oh, okay, I guess this was a way bigger deal than the 3 seconds that I said it live on the air. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it was great. I saw it. My mom asked me, she's like, Josh, right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, did he plan that? I'm like, no, he didn't plan it. I said, I said, you have to look at Phil Bourque on the radio side. That's all staged. That's his little is all staged. But I said, no, Josh's was organic. So.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Him and Borky always bringing all the energy. Rob, good to have you on. We love you. We miss seeing you, and we can't wait to see you at the rink sometime soon, hopefully. But so many good stories. We'll have to have you on again. Thanks so much.
Stay excellent, guys.
No one gets you ready for puck drop like Penguins Face Off Live. Pre-game insights, analysis, and a word straight from the coach. Penguins Face Off Live before every game on SportsNet Pittsburgh. Presented by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Another guy recently coming back, Josh, Blake Lizotte. I mean, ever since Lizzo came back in the lineup, the Penguins have not lost a game. What does that say about kind of his impact on the ice, as that fourth line has been a huge part of these last few wins for the Pens?
Yeah, Hailey, I'm sure you get asked a lot, and I do too, about this team and how they have made things work this year. And a lot of times when I talk to people, I said, if you go back to October, like, goaltending was the biggest difference maker. They had below average goaltending all of last season and for parts of the year prior. The start of this year, they had way above average goaltending, and it buoyed them a few times when they had games where they were outplayed or maybe outchanced. But the one consistent with all their winning style this year has been that they've had that identity of that line of Lizotte, Achari, and Dewar. And I don't think people really understand how important this trio is for them, because you think of a fourth line, you think of muckers, grinders, guys that, can stir the pot a little bit. These guys can do that, but they also, as you can see there in the last 5 games, they can produce. I mean, the goal from Noel Acciari in Columbus on Sunday is what ignited this team to come on the comeback trail. And I don't think it was a surprise that that was the line that did it, because it seems like for Dan Muse, whether it's after a Penguins goal and trying to keep the momentum going, or if they're trying to claw their way back into a game and trying to put together a couple strong shifts, the line he taps first is that Lizotte, Dewar, and Acciari line. And I called them in Columbus, said that the heartbeat line. I mean, I've heard a couple guys in the room call them the lad line with Lizotte, Acciari, Dewar. So I don't know what you want to call them, but they are certainly a difference-making line for the Penguins. And like you said, with Blake Lizotte back, he's just, to quote Phil Bourque, he's a hound dog on a pork chop when he's out there trying to get the puck every single shift. And he's made a difference, and that line's been huge.
Yeah, 13, 3, and 3 when all 3 of those guys are in the lineup. That's a pretty insane record right there. And I love what Lizzo said the other day. He said, you know what? We're grabbing the lunch pail, we're grabbing the work boots, and we're just jumping over the boards and doing our job. So I just love the hardworking effort and grind of that line. By the way, Lizzo, about to be a first-time dad in a couple months here. Huge congratulations to him and his wife, Abby. Josh, you've got a couple of youngins running around. What kind of advice you're going to give to him once he becomes a dad?
Yeah, I'll have to talk to him, because my first advice would be that I used to joke with this. Actually, Mike Matheson was on the Penguins a handful of years back, and he and I had kids at almost the exact same time. And my joke to him was, what is more concerning or harder to protect, the 2-goal lead or to play defense for a newborn that did not get their nap? Because they are both extremely scary. So I will be saying similar stuff to Noel Acciari. He's already got 4 kids of his own, or 3 kids, whatever. But for Blake Lizotte, maybe those are the guys he needs to talk to more, his line mate there about raising him. But that's exciting. I actually didn't know that. So that's really exciting for Blake Lizotte and his wife, Abby, you said?
Yes. Super
All right,
nice
well, congrats to them. That's great.
Huge congrats to them. Well, yeah, you'll definitely have to give them some advice there. And you know what? I'm going to store that in the back of my brain for when I have kids one day as well. But with that, seeing his return, Evgeni Malkin also went to the IR at the same time as Lizzo did. But really nice to see Gino return back this week to the lineup. As he returns from injury, he's going to lead us into our Cup Combo Cut celebration, celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Penguins' 2016 Stanley Cup Championship, as this week in Penguins history, Gino reached the 20 assist mark for the 10th time in his career in a 3-1 win over Montreal. But now in his 20th straight season with at least 20 assists, the Penguins are getting him back after missing the last 15 games. We're all excited about what he can do, but we did see him on a different line and in a different position at practice this week. So curious your thoughts on that. I mean, you really can't break up Mantha, Brazeau, and Novak with the way they're playing right now. But it's funny because we are also excited to see that line get going again when Gino returned.
Yeah, exactly, right? You could argue, Hailey, and I know you would probably agree, that the first month of the season, they were the best line. Like they carried the Penguins at times with how dominant they were. They were these 3 monsters that just seemed to control the puck and control the offense when they were on the ice. And I was kind of surprised that they didn't get put back together because of how good they were. But at the same time, I think it's a testament to how good Tommy Novak's been over the last week and a half, and how he's kind of earned at least the first look to stay in that spot. Do I think that this is set up to potentially have a quick swap if it's not working against the Devils on Thursday night? 1,000,000%. But if it is working, then you look at this Penguins lineup, and all of a sudden, we mentioned that 4th line, how great they've been. I hesitate to even call them a 4th line with how Dan Muse utilizes them, but you get this Novak line that's been humming as well. And now you put Gino on the wing, which, we heard from Rob Rossi about the career of Evgeni Malkin. I think if he's going to extend his career, it's on the wing. And that is going to be an opportunity for him to do that coming off this injury. He won't have to do as many face-offs. He already said it was a shoulder thing that kept him out. So he's not going to be bending over and doing draws right out of the gate here. That's going to go to Ben Kindle. And I think it could be fun to watch him with Kindle and Chinikov. I mean, it's an 18-year-old, a 24-year-old, and NHL be damned, one of the 100 greatest players of all time in Evgeni Malkin. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but it should be fun to watch.
He was really kind in the way he spoke about Chinikov as well, a Russian native, and Igor Chinikov yesterday at practice. So I'm kind of curious to see if they have like a little bit of chemistry as well. They seem to get along great. They played in a couple of charity games back home in Russia together. I don't believe Chino's ever had a Russian line mate before, right? Or am I forgetting someone here?
He has had one, and our producer Nick is nodding his head because he knows where I'm going with this. This actually was our trivia question, the last Get Me The Brandy we had.
Oh, I wasn't here for that.
Now, this, I will say, Chinikov, and this is no disrespect to the player I'm about to mention, but Chinikov is a very low bar to clear to be a productive line mate for Evgeni Malkin as far as a Russian is concerned, because Sergei Plotnikov was the line mate of his. We're going way back to the 2015-16 season. And this was a kid that was really good in the KHL, came over, just didn't work here. And he went back to the KHL and was really good. He just wasn't an NHL player. So,
and were they good together?
Yeah, they were line mates. Yep.
Were they pretty good together though? Obviously, if they stuck for a while. Okay.
No, they really didn't work that well. And Plotnikov kind of fell his way down the lineup and eventually got traded. But Chinikov is, we know what the pedigree is here, right? Like, this is a first round pick. I still can't get over the note that I saw the other day where they said his wrist shots over 99 miles an hour. Like, what does this guy do? Like wrist curl, like a 500-pound dumbbell? I don't understand how he can unleash the puck so quickly. Yeah. So that's between him and Malkin and Kindle. I think that line, and listen, it depends how Dan Muse deploys it. He's going to have home ice and last change the first time he gets this lineup together. But that line can get some serious matchups. Playing against a third defensive pair or depth forwards. And when you have Evgeni Malkin going against depth forwards or a third defensive pair, you like your chances, especially if he's going to be going like he was before his injury.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see like the high hockey IQ between Ben Kindle. I know he's only 18 years old and Gino together. That's going to be really interesting to see. I think they're going to have some chemistry together, but we'll find out soon enough. Hey, real quick as we wrap things up though, Josh, I got to know your biggest snub for the Olympic teams. Who is somebody that you were really surprised that didn't make it this year? We're, of course, so happy to have Erik Karlsson, Rickard Rakell, Sidney Crosby, and Artur Shilovs representing.
Yeah, and congrats to those guys. I got to talk to a couple of them at practice on Wednesday. I know the Swedes especially are through the roof to get the opportunity. But I will say the one that surprised me the most, and people are going to say this is because of a Penguins slant. It's not. It's more just like a championship pedigree slant. I don't know how Sam Bennett didn't get picked over Tom Wilson for Team Canada. When you're talking about the type of player, yes, I understand you probably don't want two of the same kind. But to me, Sam Bennett was a part of the Four Nations roster that won gold. He played a major role in that. He's been great for Florida in the playoffs the last 2 years. He's like the quintessential guy you would hate to play against, but would love on your team. And I just think, for Wilson, obviously has established himself as a really good player on top of, getting away with some dirty hits over the course of his career. But he's earned the right to be there. If you're asking me, I would have picked Bennett over Wilson. And I know I've read the last couple of days that Bennett, I guess, has been informed that he's one of the injury replacements if someone is to be hurt. Sure. But that's probably the biggest one. To me, that the next biggest one after that, honestly, is Matthew Schaefer not being picked for Team Canada. Because I don't know, Hales, like I was watching the Islander Devil game. To me, I think he's a top 5 defenseman in the NHL right now. I don't think we're talking like top 20. I think top 5. Like he's that good. And he's 18. And I know that Canada, they stepped out of their comfort zone by picking the 19-year-old in Celebrini, and they don't usually do that. Like Sid was an exception way back when too. But I don't know. If you're best on best and you want your best options, I would have gone Schaefer and Bennett if I'm Canada. And there were some questionable U.S. ones too, but it's hard to argue. It's easier for me to argue the Canadian decisions than the U.S. ones, in my opinion, at least.
I think a lot of people agree with you on that. I've been seeing a lot of that. I think like Jason Robertson, that was also probably a big one, right? I believe he's top 10 in both goals and points right now in the league. How do you not have him on the team? But it's hard, there's only so many spots for so many guys, and they're also trying to make a team, not just pick all the best players. So what are you going to do at the end of the day when it comes down to that? But of course, really looking forward to watching our 4 Penguins in Crosby, Raquel, She Loves, as well as Carlson all represent at the upcoming Olympics. Thankfully, it's not COVID this time, so they can experience it a little bit more in its entirety. I was at the Olympics in China in 2022, and that was quite an experience, but excited to watch it all unfold. Josh, great to get together with you as always, and excited to see if the Pens can keep these wins coming.
Yeah, same to you, Hales. Enjoyed the hockey talk, and I will see you at the rink.
Okay, see you soon. Thanks so much for everyone for joining this week's episode of Get Me The Brandy.
Oh!